you should have already done IXL K1 and K2 now. Now we're going to talk about solving inequalities. And solving inequalities is like solving equations. You want to isolate the variable. And whatever we do to one side, you know it, we must do to the other. Golden rule of algebra. All right, so it's going to be pretty familiar process. And if you are good at solving equations, then you'll be fine. So we simply use the inequality symbol instead of an equal sign and then create a number line graph if we're asked to, the way you just did those number line graphs in K1. So here, if I want to solve this first inequality, then I would subtract 5 on both sides. Then I would have x is less than 12 minus 5 is 7. So that would be an open circle at 7 with shading off to the left. So here, if I add 7 to both sides to get the x by itself, I would have x is greater than 2. Again, open circle, this time my shading would be to the right. So that was examples of addition and subtraction equations. Now, this is very important. So important, I'm going to sing about it. And that is that there's one extra step, and that's if you multiply or divide by a negative. If you multiply or divide by a negative. Okay, so you all know, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you multiply or divide by a negative, flip the sign. If you multiply or divide by a negative, flip the sign. I'll sing a silly song so you don't get it wrong. If you multiply or divide by a negative, flip the sign. So you really don't want me to sing again. So try to remember, if you multiply or divide by a negative when you're solving, you're going to reverse the inequality sign. Now, some of you might just trust me so much already that you're like, okay, whatever you say, Miss Carolyn, no worries, I can do that. And some of you might be saying, why? Why would I do that? Well, let's try a couple things. If I'm comparing these two numbers, -3 and 5, I think we can all agree that -3 is less than 5, and that 4 is greater than 8, -8. Now, what if we multiplied each of these numbers by -2? You know, like doing the same thing on both sides. Multiplying. Well, now this would be +6 and -10. Now, if I want to correctly compare those two, I would have to say that 6 is greater than -10. And over here, this would become -8 and +16. -8 is less than 16. So notice what happened. Were you able to use the same symbol, the same sign? No, right? I had to reverse the sign or it wasn't correct. So when we're working with an equation, we might have a variable instead, but that variable still represents a number. So when we multiply or divide both sides by a negative, it basically makes it on the other side, right? Because like instead of being in the positives, it would be in the negatives, or instead of the negatives, it would be in the positives. And so it reverses the relationship. So let's try a couple more examples. Negative 20 is less than 50. 100, these nice whole numbers, positive numbers. 100 is, of course, greater than 20. Now let's divide them all by negative 10 and compare again. So here I would have positive 2 and negative 5. And 2 is greater than negative 5. Here I have negative 10 and negative 2. And remember, like warmer, greater as in warmer, negative 10 is less than negative 2. So you never have to worry about this step if it's adding and subtracting. It's when it's multiplying and dividing that it comes into play. Otherwise, it's basically the same process as solving equations, but we do have that extra thing. Now, sometimes my students get a little flippin' happy, and they're so excited about using this rule that every time they see a negative, they think they need to flip the sign. So let's try another couple examples. Negative 8 is less than 4, and 6 is greater than negative 10. Now, if we divide them by positive 2, I have negative 4 and positive 2. And which way should my symbol go? The same, right? Negative 4 is less than 2. 6 is greater than negative 10. When I divide those, 3, negative 5. 3 is greater than negative 5. And the inequality sign can remain the same. So it's not every time we see a negative or that the answer is negative. It's if we multiply or divide by a negative. So a problem such as this will not need to change. I'm dividing by a regular 3, right? A positive 3. But if I had this problem, and I divide by negative 3, because that's the coefficient of x, is a negative number, that's a 4, but then this would be greater than or equal to 4. Even though the 4 is positive even. So it's, but what did I do to both sides? I divide it by a negative. And so that brings us to K4. K3 is not assigned, okay? If you get finished with your other lessons and you would like to attempt it, you can, but it is not assigned. So now we're going to go to K4, and you should find that this is very familiar. There's just a different symbol. So t plus 8 is greater than 9. So again, just like an equation, I'm going to do the same thing to both sides to get that variable isolated. I get t is greater than 1. So I don't just type in 1, now I have to type in t is greater than 1. Okay, so you do not have to change that symbol unless you multiply or divide by a negative. I will, and these are all adding and subtracting, so you won't have to worry about that. But I do want to see if they give you one where it's on the other side. Just bigger. So, because I wanted to point out, if you had something like 12, this is not this question, 12 is less than or equal to x plus 5, you would subtract 5, and then 7 is less than or equal to x. And you could type the answer in just like this. If instead you choose to put the x in first, then you would have to use the other symbol because the x is the bigger of the two things, right? It's open to the x. So if you decide to change the side, it's not like the equal sign. The symbol kind of follows it. So for instance, if I said Brandy is taller than Miss Carolyn. If that's true, if I start by saying Miss Carolyn, I can't use the word taller anymore to compare the two of them. I would have to say Miss Carolyn is shorter than Brandy. So when we're comparing two things, if we change the order, we need to use a different word, just like we would use a different symbol here. So that's what K is happening in K4. It's just adding and subtracting. Things should go pretty quickly, which is why you saw such a long list of lessons, because they should go pretty quickly, especially only going to 80. When you get into these multiplication and division ones, things will get a little more, I don't want to say tricky, but you do have to pay attention because of the negatives. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So then I would have D is greater than or equal to 2 times 4 would be 8. So you might think, how am I going to type that symbol? Once you click in the box, it's going to give you those options. So D, same symbol with the line, 2 times 4 is 8. Looks like we got another 8 there. So now I see one with a negative. So we would need to, if this is my equation, or inequality, my bad. If this is my inequality and I want to get that variable by itself, I need to multiply by -1. So now W, -6, and we multiplied by a negative, so the symbol is going to change direction. So then instead of less than or equal to, now it's greater than or equal to. So W is greater than or equal to -6. So here we would be dividing by a negative. 2 negatives when I divide do give me a positive. Because we divide by a negative, our symbol is going to reverse directions. Reverse. First I was telling you crisscross, now it's reverse. So on a problem like this one, all we need to do is multiply by 4. So 16 is greater than J. Or you could type in J is less than 16. You do not have to flip it around. However, if you miss the problem, so this is correct, but if I miss it, if let's say for whatever reason at that point I said 12, and then I use the symbol and then I put J. If I miss the problem, then IXL is always going to write it with the J first. But notice what I had said 16 is greater than J. that means the same thing. That would have been okay. That's not the reason I missed it. I missed it because I typed in a 12. So when it shows you the correct answer, if you do miss it, it's going to flip it around. But it does accept it in that form. Let's see if I can get it to give us another one so I can show you that it does actually accept it in the other order. It's more the same. Yes, it's going to take more than 4 questions because I've skipped, but looks like even the challenge zone there is more of the same. So that was K4. And then, sorry about that. We looked, that was K5. K6 is just going to be a variety. All right. So you're going to have to decide, add, subtract, multiply, divide, and you're going to have to remember when you need to flip the sign. So it's just like mixed up problems from 4 and 5. K7, now you're going to put them on a number line. So you will graph after you have solved it. So in this case, these are on the same side. So it's not do something to both sides. It's just simplify, like combine like terms. So that's 8. So J is less than or equal to 8. So close circle at 8 all the way back. 3 times 2 is 6. This one needs to be an open circle. W is greater, so it's off to the right where the greater numbers live. 2 times 4 is 8. This one is closed. It has the or equal line, and R is less than or equal to. So these first ones, we don't have to do something to both sides. We're just simplifying what they start with. So if it's already on the same side, you just need to combine like terms. And then this one, so here's where you don't have to move it to the other side, but it may help you to realize which way your graph is going. So I need to get the J by itself. So I'm going to add 3. So 4 is greater than negative J, but we can't leave that as a negative, so we're going to divide by -1. So -4, flip the sign, and J. So there's going to be an open circle at -4, but now I need to think, which way do I shade? So the variable is on the open side of that inequality, which means we want our shading to represent all the things that are bigger than that. Keep in mind, I could rewrite it this way with J on the left. The symbol would follow the J. That open side would stay to the J. So saying -4 is less than J is the same as J is greater than -4. So I'm going to open circle here at -4 and shade all the way to the right. So they're not all going to be that tricky, but just be on the lookout when it's on the right. You might want to rewrite it to make sure your graph is going in the right direction. So add 1 to both sides. That gives us 4. Think, is it open or closed? Oh, it should be open. It should be going to the right because the variable is on the open side. All right, so h is already by itself. We just need to simplify. So this is saying 8 is greater than or equal to h. Close circle at 8. And h is on the point side. So h is represents the numbers that are smaller than the 8. All right, I hope that's helpful. Hopefully I will see many of you in class, but for those unable to attend class, I hope that helps. And that should help you with K4, 5, 6, and 7.